Test. Make sure everything's good. Good evening. We're gonna get going here right away. Um, so if you want to get, I guess, comfortable, um, tonight's gonna be interesting. Um, this is what when you've had what almost 6 months in between your missions trip and your report. It makes for interesting memory. You got to try and recall everything. So if all of a sudden it seems a little bit stuttery because, oh yeah, and that, remember? Yeah. That's why. It's when you start looking at some of these pictures, you start recalling stuff that maybe you forgot. But are we already on the live stream? For those who are catching us live stream, because we are going to have some time here for questions. If you have my cell number, which I'm not going to give out over the live stream, but if you are on the live stream, you have my cell number, you can text me your questions, and I will get it on my phone, and I will try and work it into our presentation as far as answering those questions. So if you want to do that, you can. If we're ready, though, I'm just looking here at Gary can come up already if he wants. I think Mike's just trying to get a few last things figured out there. One of the things Gary does that I'm very thankful for, and I think I'm going to do it moving forward now after this trip, is he has a journal that he takes with him, and he writes everything down from the day. And usually my memory is really good that even a month or two after I've done something, I can remember it all. 6 months is a long time to retain all that information, and so this whole situation has caused me to realize the benefit of having that. So anyways, if you guys want to have a seat, we're going to open in a word of prayer here, but then we will get started. Oh. Yeah, whatever chair you prefer. Dear Lord, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the opportunity we have as a church to bless other churches in other parts of the world, to minister to them as well, and to support them. And Lord, we thank you for the opportunity we had in Mexico and Oaxaca. And I just pray, Lord, that now as we report and as we share, that you would be glorified in it all. And Lord, even create excitement for the next time we can do this. Not only for Oaxaca, but for other churches as well. So again, we thank you for this evening. Just bless this time in your name. Amen. Okay. So we're flying a little bit by our seat of our pants this evening. So we'll maybe go through the pictures first. Is that a good way? Or do we want to just share a little and then look at pictures as we go? Let's look at some pictures. So I don't know if they're particularly in any order. Yes, Gary? Or you want to, here, do you want to turn sideways? I can move over more and you can turn more sideways. That's true. Can you turn the light off so we can see the picture better? I can do that. Okay. How's that? Is that better? Okay. So this is mainly our crew. The last guy on the end, he really only was there for like half the day, the last day we were there. But the other two guys that we worked with, Gary nicknamed them. So their actual names. So the gentleman on the far left there, that was Diego. It was his name. And the shorter gentleman that would be beside Gary and Anthony right in the middle there, that was Antonio. So Gary nicknamed them, though, San Antonio and San Diego. So that's how we refer to them after that. I think you came up with that the very first day already. Yeah. Oh, Oh, that's a good idea right there. So San Diego, San Antonio, and you can kind of tell just just we're standing on flat ground. So San Antonio was a little bit shorter than most. Um, so okay, we call him. It was Francisco though, who is okay. So yeah, I want to make all the connections here. If you guys want to speak in, you guys can here at any point. But San Diego was the father of Francisco. Gary called him San Francisco then, right? Um, and Francisco is kind of an assistant pastor, an associate pastor at the church here. And so this is his dad helping. His dad's not a believer. And so, oh, no, it's all good, Gary, don't worry. Just a little bit of feedback. So it was a very unique experience working with him. And you guys can correct me if you guys think I'm off on anything, just correct me here. Some of the work that we did was very back-breaking work, and we'll talk about that as we go. But there were points at which I almost felt like he was pushing us a little bit to see whether we would break, like whether or not we could actually handle it as believers. And but you know what? Nice guy. Worked well with him. And then San Antonio, he was a believer, but very poor, like very, very poor. Like if you saw his shoes, they were. Go ahead, Gary.
Yeah,
I want to say something.
I tried to give him my shoes when I left, but my shoes were. I don't consider myself large, but my shoes were a size 11, and poor San Antonio, he said they wouldn't work. They were just too big. Could probably put his feet crossways in them, but he was poor. And those two guys, San Antonio and San Diego, they slept. They brought their blanket. Well, San Diego had blanket. I don't know if San Antonio just slept on the floor every night.
I think he just slept on the floor.
And nothing. They didn't have anything, those fellows. I did give San Antonio my gloves when I left, and he was just so grateful. But they're poor.
No. So that was the crew that worked together, the four of us and the two of them, largely the entire week. And you can kind of see what we got accomplished there. This was getting the foundation for their new kitchen put in. And so as we go through some of the pictures, you'll see all the work that led to all of this, but we'll get there. So I don't know if you want to... Oh, there we go. Okay, so this is us at the airport in... That's Saskatoon?
3 a.m.
Oh, yeah, that is Saskatoon. So, yeah, 3 a.m. That was an early morning. COVID was talked about a little bit on the news at this point, but like seriously was not at all, at least I don't remember even having a second thought about it. Did you guys? No. So none of that was going through our minds at this point, at least. So we hopped on the plane to Toronto, right, Gary?
Yep.
Got to Toronto. From Toronto, we went to Houston. From Houston, then we went to Oaxaca. I don't know if there's any pictures in between there. We had a little bit of time in between our stop in Houston for supper. What was that Chinese place? Panda something, wasn't it?
Anyways, we had Chinese food.
Yeah, it was good.
But when you get to Houston, you can tell you're in Texas. They're walking around with their cowboy hats and big Stetsons and cowboy boots, and it's George Bush International Airport. And it was really neat. No snow, hot flowers everywhere, and it was just so nice.
So these are the two Americans we worked with, Dave and Terry. This is Dave. We've actually worked with him before in Haiti. And so that was actually a neat connection for us. So, and that's Terry. We met him for the first time. But when we landed in Oaxaca, we only had to wait about half an hour for them to arrive on their flight. And so, yeah, as soon as Dave walked through the door, those of us who had met him in Haiti recognized him immediately. And so that was nice. That was a good connection. Had a lot of fun with Dave throughout the week. They mainly came down to work on the vehicles.
And Dave and Terry are brother-in-laws.
Yes. So, okay. Okay, so this is where we got to stay. We felt very spoiled. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. You can admit that. Because when you go from Haiti to Oaxaca, the accommodations are quite nice. So Cito and Juanita literally live across the street. Feedback. They literally live across the street. This is their retirement plan right here. And so it's three stories. Each level is self-contained. It's got a like awesome roof for especially at night. You can see out on almost the whole city from up there. Yeah, just beautiful. And so we were on the
Second floor.
Second floor, right?
Yeah.
Because there's another mission organization I think that utilizes the third one that they rent out. And then on the bottom, their daughters actually live. And so it's a retirement plan. They rent out all the spaces to different organizations. And so again, like that's how they, between that and his dentistry, that's them building for the future for themselves. So, but they live literally just right across the street. So they were, in the morning for breakfast, we just hop across the street and have breakfast with them. It was great.
You'll notice that pretty well everybody has a gated compound for their vehicles. And there's, on the back side of this condo or whatever you want to call it, there was another place where Cito could park vehicles, but this was, I think this was their daughters, or there was another American missionary that was there with her. So they had two little cars parked in there. And then across the street, Cito had a really nice parking lot for one vehicle, and in the back of their house they had a number of other vehicles that they didn't seem to worry about them being parked inside of a gated community.
Yeah. So yeah, we were spoiled. So this is just a picture of kind of how they deal with stuff, like in Mexico. So these are the water tanks that store all their water. They pump all their water up onto the roof. These are their propane, right? Or was it
Propane.
Yeah, propane, right? So propane tanks. So again, everything is up on the roof, away from everywhere. But we were there during the dry season. And so it hadn't rained in months, like at all. And it wasn't gonna rain, they said, for a few more months, I think.
I think at least till June or July.
Yeah. They literally go 6 months without any rain whatsoever. And so when we came, one of the first things he says to us, he's like, be careful with the water, please. And actually by the end of the week, he was really impressed on how little water we had actually utilized, which was us just trying to be good stewards, right? Even though we had these really nice facilities, we didn't want to take advantage of that. So we were very careful about how long we showered and everything else. And so yeah, he was super happy at the end of the week that we hadn't used more water. So, but again, you can kind of see how you can see out on a lot of Oaxaca up there. You can kind of see it there in the background, and they have a 360 view. And so at night it lights up, because it's different than for anyone who's been to some maybe major cities in Mexico, or even here in Canada for that matter. We have tall buildings, right? In Oaxaca, there's not a lot of like really tall buildings. You might have like a 4-story building in Oaxaca, and that's about as high as it gets. So when you look out, there's nothing obstructing your view. It's just all nice and flat. It's actually, I don't know, do we have a picture of when we get up, when we went for that drive up? Yeah? Okay, we'll show you in a second. Okay, next picture. So this is Cito and Juanita. These are our hosts. You guys have, some of you have met them, right? They've been here in church, right? They came in for a missions conference before, correct? Yeah. You guys can speak. I appreciated them a ton. They're super nice people. Yeah, so easy to get along with.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, they looked after everything, and yeah, we just really enjoyed our time with them.
Cito is a perfectionist. And you have to be when you're a optometrist, no, dentist, sorry.
Yeah.
He's a dentist. But even, you'll see pictures of his dentist building right across the street. It was just, it was clean to the T, it was organized, it was just second to none. And everything that he does, it's the same way. And even some of the stuff that we did, we didn't have to do it, but he wanted it done anyways, so
We did it.
we did it.
We'll maybe explain that in a little bit. But anyways. Okay, so these aren't our drugs, just to be clear. So the place we were staying in is utilized by another mission, and that mission does a lot of free, I guess you want to call it healthcare, trying to support locals who can't necessarily afford certain things. And so this is kind of a bit of their stash, I guess if you want to call it that way. And so this was in one of the rooms we were staying in, is their supplies. They had a few other places too where they stored supplies, but that's part of what CETO and Juanita try and help. They try and rent out to these other mission organizations that are helping locals. And so you can see a lot of different medical supplies there. Okay, so this is across the street. Do we have pictures inside of his dental office? Okay, so from the outside, this is kind of your prototypical building in Oaxaca, and you can see his sign there for his dental. From the outside, it doesn't necessarily look that maybe like stick out as being like really super nice, but it's the next one, the inside. Then you get inside, and this is just a small taste of it. That's his assistant there, kind of his secretary who helps out with some of the procedures. But as you can see, like it's an office that if you walked into a Saskatoon dental office, it's exactly what you would expect there too. It's extremely clean, well taken care of. Everything that you can get done in Saskatoon, he can do there in Mexico. Which, by the way, he gives a fairly decent discount. So if next time you talk to Eugene, tell him to show you his teeth, because I think Eugene has got a lot of his dental work done by CETO. So if that's any indication, he does a really good job. So again, this is just his setup that he has in his office. Very, very nice, very clean, immaculate, and so he's very proud of it, and as well should be. Okay, so this is what Dave and Terry came to do. Fix the vehicles that they had. So the Suburban here is used for a ton of different ministry opportunities. There's a lot of churches up in the mountains in the area. I'm just trying to think. The last time we went to Oaxaca as a church, which is quite a while ago, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was, I'm trying to remember what Jake Fair said. It was like 18, 20 years ago, something like that. Is that correct? I'm asking if anyone remembers that. Anyways, if no one remembers it, then I can say it, because then no one can correct me on it. So, and if I'm wrong, oh well. So they have lots of different churches that they help minister to in the mountains around Oaxaca, and they use this Suburban to get to those places because the roads are very tight, they're very rocky, they're not any. The roads in Oaxaca were actually not bad.
Really good.
Yeah, the roads in Oaxaca were great, actually.
Yeah. And the vehicles were great. So can you back up a few slides? I want to ask the guys a skill testing question. The guys. Got to go back to CETO's.
Okay.
In front of CETO's, there was a truck parked there. A white truck. Can anybody tell me what make that was? No. No. A Volkswagen. It was amazing to see Volkswagen trucks. They have different vehicles down there, like they have Toyotas and all what we have, but they have different models that we've never seen before. And they're big buses. They had Volkswagen buses, great big buses. And everything is in nice shape. Like those gravel trucks that brought our gravel, I'd say they had to be about 68 Ford,
Yeah, they were definitely quite a bit older.
3-ton truck, maybe, single axle. And they were like the day they came out of the shop or the factory. They were just
I
perfect.
guess it helps though if it never snows there and you don't have to salt your highways, I guess.
But
they do take care, for the most part, there's definitely some rougher vehicles, but they do try and take care of their vehicles.
But about every couple hundred yards there's a bump. Like they got these speed bumps all over.
Yeah.
You don't go fast.
You
So
can't go, yeah.
You can't go fast.
So if you want to go back, so that's suburban. It takes them everywhere. And again, once you get out into the mountains, the roads are a little bit more treacherous. And so they were redoing, they were working on the axles, they were doing brakes, rotors, things that are pretty important if you're coming down a mountain. You don't really want to lose your brakes. And so Juanita does a ton of women's ministry out in the mountains. And so she obviously relies very heavily on this vehicle. And so, again, that's why it was a pretty high priority for Dave and Terry to get finished.
And Oaxaca is over 5,000 feet in elevation already. And when they're talking mountains, where Cito grew up, like those mountains must be horrendous because we didn't fly over them with a jet. We went around them. Yeah. And so they're up and they're in very narrow roads, Juanita says. Very narrow.
Yeah, very narrow roads. As you can see, just we climb right into the engine block, and that's how we work on our vehicles. So
blocked up beautifully.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, did you guys, like when we were, I'd noticed the elevation, definitely, at least to an extent, like as far as working. At least, maybe that was just me sitting in an office for too long, and then maybe I am just huffing and puffing too soon.
But Justin had no mercy on us. We would work all day, and then he insisted that we jog back to the house. Would you believe? That was at least
I think you're getting
minutes.
me confused with someone else, but that's okay. But actually, one of the things I want to mention before I forget, as much as we went this time with just a group of guys and we had a very specific task to complete, it would be good for us, and I think there's lots of opportunities for us if we had either our wives or other female leaders come with us next time, because Juanita is involved in a lot of women's ministries, and it would be a great opportunity in that way as well. And so it's definitely not just for guys. So yeah, Dave just climbs right in. Oh, here's their other vehicle. Their I don't know what's their bug or whatever, but
Juanita's bug.
Yeah, that was fun to drive around actually. It's yeah, but this is actually how old a lot of the vehicles in Mexico are, but it's still in decent shape, hey, for its age, and so just pretty impressive actually.
So downtown Oaxaca, there's some streets that can really confuse you. Remember those?
Well, there's a few.
Oh, you got to know where to go, or you're going to have an accident.
Yeah. So you have some intersections where you got like 5 or 6 roads coming into one, and it's not really a roundabout. Like where if you find a place like that in Canada, usually they throw in a roundabout. There's no roundabout. It's just 5 or 6 roads converging into one spot, and you're just trying to figure out who's going to go, and it can be a little messy, but it's good. This is
church sign.
Church, right?
The church sign.
Yeah. And I can't read it very well. Biblical practice. Anyways, their church is coming along very, very well. Cito and Juanita have done an amazing job. If you see the original church, which I think we'll see some pictures of the original church, I don't know. Oh, okay, so here's the whole complex. This is the church over here, the sanctuary aspect of it. There, that's a good look at it. So this is the church sanctuary. Even this back part, that's more their stage, but this whole thing is their sanctuary. And then this part here is like washrooms, classrooms, And this is something they've been slowly building over the last 20 years. And so part of the project now was this to revamp their whole kitchen area, which is what our project was. This is the inside of that church. Stage. Instead of using a projector, they've got 4 very large TVs that they've connected together, and so the words for the singing are just up on those TVs. I think it houses about 100 people, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So just with chairs at this point. Cito was already trying to bounce some ideas or get a few of us to try and think of ways in which they can increase their capacity. And so we actually already had some ideas of how to utilize the space up here to actually create more capacity for them. What else? Project-wise, they want to do some sound dampening in here because of being concrete walls. The sound bounces all over the place.
Pretty bad. I think lighting too, they were talking about
Yeah.
some of that.
Wanting to redo some of the lighting. They are having issues with getting internet up there. Mike was already doing some brainstorming of how to do that for them. Basically, Cito was like, when can you come back? Because we need to get these projects done. So we literally already have a list of projects we can do the next time we go. It's great, but wonderful little space. This is the truck, the church. I think the church's truck. It was at Cito's place a lot.
Yeah.
But I think it's a church.
That was
truck.
Eugene's truck.
Like his old truck.
Yeah.
Before he shipped it over.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of their do-all vehicle. It hauls a lot of stuff, and it hauled us around most of the week. So when we'd go to someone's house, no matter how far away it was, we rode in the back.
And when we got there, it didn't run. So Dave got it running, and boy, I tell you, that thing was a blessing to have because we could all pile in there.
You were fortunate if you got to sit along the back. There was a little bit more give on the metal box there. If you were on the side here, you can see how narrow that box is, and it does not give. And so if it was a half hour, 45-minute drive, you got up a little slowly, we'll say, but really good. So here's some of building supplies.
Yeah, started what we started there.
Yeah. So bricks, rebar. This is just fill. That really didn't have much. That was just stuff that was dug out. More bricks, lots and lots of bricks. Moved a lot of bricks. This is where we had dug out. This is where the old church had been. They had the old church, the old kitchen removed. And so we helped finish up trenching this thing on both sides, put in footings. And so, again, everything's by hand. There's no backhoes, no bobcats. It's you dig with a pickaxe and a shovel and wheelbarrow everything out.
So on the left, right there, that's the kitchen. That's where we ate. And
Oh,
kitchen
that's right
and-
here, yeah.
Yeah, and so that there was a kitchen in between here, but when you think of their earthquakes, I guess they need something that's going to withstand the earthquakes because we had 2 earthquakes when we were there one night.
So if you want to go to that next slide. So part of it was digging out this trench. So here's where we talk about doing more than we thought we probably needed to, but did it anyways, no matter, just to be good Christian workers, you know. Right here. So there's these nice little patches of concrete that they wanted cleaned straight. They wanted all of this nice and flush. And so we, with chisel.
Yeah, one chisel.
Yeah, one chisel.
5-pound mallet on there.
And just kept chiseling. And this isn't just like bricks. This is concrete that has, yeah, it was hard stuff. We had to sub one another off because our hands were getting blisters and were so tight from trying to hold that it was a lot of work, we'll say. And then they're digging a hole for one of the footings that had to be put in. Again, pickaxe and shovel. All do it by hand. Then we had to take out an old footing, and so there's Gary using the sledge to try and take it out. That took us a little bit of time to get that knocked out. We figured once we exposed it on both sides, we thought, oh, you just take the sledge to one side and it'll just pound right out, right? Yeah, no. We hammered on that for a while. So yeah, took turns.
The Reverend is just giving her, right?
Yeah, so we just took turns. You'd go hard for about 2-3 minutes, sub off another guy. He'd go hard for 2 to 3 minutes. That way you got about a 10-minute break before you had to cycle back in again. And so it was just go, go, go. And as you can see, it's hot. You're tired. It was a lot of work. So by this point already, you can see that we've really got the bottoms nice and flat for the footings. They had already started tying a piece of rebar and string to get their heights and levels. Yeah, you can see. Did that by shovel, eh? That's pretty impressive how flat we can get that, hey? It was a lot of work, but it turned out very, very well.
And so how do you think they leveled that? Because they didn't have a transit, they didn't have a level there. Anybody figure it out?
I heard it.
Waterline.
Yeah, George, waterline. Yeah, something even like I had heard of people doing it that way, but I had never seen it before. Very, very cool, very interesting. But again, you look at that picture, we tried to make, they wanted those walls, like the sides, nice and straight. And so you look at how we cut in there, like when they wanted it straight, they wanted it straight. So it was a lot of work, but it was good. So you could just see us chiseling away there, trying to get it as flat as possible. And so when they actually put the footings in, though, we probably could have just left them where they were, and it would have been fine because they didn't even get close. But you know what? Again, it's not about us, right? It's about trying to be a good servants and good stewards. And so we did everything they asked, and it was good. So we got most of this done that very first day, did we not? Or was it the first full 2 days to get to this point?
We were pouring, that was Monday, poured concrete on Tuesday already.
Yeah. So we did a lot of this in one day. And so lots of back-breaking work, lots of moving dirt. And actually, we ended up having to go a little bit deeper yet before we even poured. The dirt in the middle, I don't know, maybe we'll see some pictures here yet, got so heaping that it started to become a bit of a hindrance, but we kept making it work. Here's Anthony and Gary. They were cutting and twisting some rebar for the footings. That's Cito there. He had come to join us. I think he had a break between patients, so he had come to make sure we were still working. At least 3. Yeah, I was going to say at least 3, but yeah, probably 4 feet deep. And so then here we were trying to get this. So the thin rebar, like I don't even know if you want to call that rebar. It's just steel, right, Gary?
Yeah, it was just like about the size of a pencil.
But it comes in rolls, like really big rolls. But it comes in rolls because it's easy to transport that way. But they need all those pieces straightened out. So you cut them, and then we had to hammer them out straight. And they were pretty picky on that.
Oh, man.
There were points at which we didn't know if we could do it well enough that they'd be, it was a lot of work. Again, just taking turns, bending rebar. Again, trying to flatten out those strips. And you can see how many are there. We had hundreds of them. And you just sit there with a hammer and you straighten them all out.
There's their transit laying there.
Oh yeah, right there. That's the hose they use with water to figure out their levels. This is us working on some of those columns, the rebar for the columns that they put up. And so we were tying together all those pieces of rebar that we had cut and twisted, and finally putting them together into these large columns.
They didn't spare the rebar, and it was good. It was a good job. Like everybody did good work. It just took so long to do.
Yeah, lots of hard work. Gary and San Diego putting them together. And then we just put them to the side, so they are out of the way, until we could stand them up. Already at this point, we had already poured the footings down here. You can kind of see.
One row, one level.
Yeah, the first level of concrete. Okay, so they do it a little differently than we would do it here. And so we poured first level, a couple of inches thick of concrete. And then on top of that, they put in rebar. You can see the rebar laying on the bottoms. And then they tie in, while they're doing that, they tie in all these columns. And then after we got all the columns standing up, then we poured another layer of concrete on top of all of that. And that was a lot of concrete that second day.
Did you have a ready-mix truck, or did you have to do it all by hand?
There's a video coming. You'll see in a second.
It's a ready-mix truck. You'll see.
Yeah, and we've
Yeah.
seen the ready-mix truck.
Yeah, the ready mix truck was called Justin, Gary, Mike, and Anthony. So Anthony and Mike, you helped Anthony with that
Yeah,
a little bit, but we had to cut out the stucco so that the column could fit and sit really nice in there. And so that was a lot of. I think that's the day Anthony may have gotten sunburned. Because he was in the sun more than any of us that day, trying to get that all cut out. So you can see the pile of dirt had grown already, eh? And we were trying to work around all of this without kicking any dirt back into the hole. Had to be very careful with it. So this is us pouring. Oh, this is the original footing. This is the first layer putting down. So everything's by hand. So we moved all of the concrete by bucket. Not only did we mix it by hand, we hauled it by hand as well. And so it was just constantly going with bucket after bucket after bucket. Cito is checking out our workmanship. Still from the first pour. This is before we did the second one. Yeah. Still just the rebar. This is kind of what it looked like before the second pour. Any questions in regards to that?
What was your temperature?
At least 30?
Yeah, pretty well 30 every day I wrote down here. But in the mornings, like, in the mornings it was nice and cool, like +7 in the morning. So it was really nice in the morning.
Yeah, you wanted to almost do the hardest work that was possible the first couple of hours, because I want to say by 10, 11, it was hot, especially after lunch. Lunch was the worst, but for heat. But you're in direct sunlight. It didn't rain there for how many months, right? There's no clouds. There's nowhere to hide. Gary actually had a really good idea, and maybe we'll see a picture. They had a bit of a canopy thing that Gary was like, hey, why don't we move this over where we're mixing all the concrete so we don't burn ourselves? It's a very smart idea. And then, so once, this is after the second pour, so you can see, right? The columns are sticking out of the concrete. That's all been tied in together. Then we had to haul hundreds and hundreds of bricks by hand so that they could start laying the bricks for the walls. And so again, just constant work, just constant hauling, all by hand. And so once they found their level, he was Diego was just trying to lay the bricks in between. Once the bricks are done, then they build around the pilings and pour those with concrete yet. But in the meantime, it's moving all these blocks, hundreds of them. Do you guys remember exactly how many we moved of bricks?
We can say any number and they'll have to believe us.
I guess that's true. I want to say that they wanted 100 or 200 blocks on either side, at least, to start with. And that was after all of these, because this was nearing the end when we were going to be leaving. And so they were basically asking us to move as many as possible so that they wouldn't have to do it themselves afterwards, which is fine. I get that. So I bet you I got to think we did 600 to 700 moved bricks. And when you're carrying just 2 at a time, it's time consuming.
And San Diego wouldn't let me lay one block, and I'm a bricklayer. But no,
He was
adamant.
adamant and very, I won't say OCD, but very, yeah. So this is after 5 days worth of work. We got the footing, we got it dug out, we got the footings poured, we got the columns in, and we started building up the walls. And so we were, as much as it was a lot of hard work and we had kind of hoped that maybe we'd be a bit further, in the end I think we recognized we did a lot of work that week. It was a lot of work.
I remember Cito saying one night, I don't know what we were thinking, how we thought we would get this done. Because San Diego and San Antonio didn't work fast.
No.
And yeah.
So this is us mixing concrete by hand.
Under the shelter.
Under the shelter. And thank goodness we had the shelter. And so we take, here's a short time-lapse video. This is one mix. I'll tell you how many we did yet.
It was about the most backward way you could ever do it, but we learned after a while how to mix it faster, way faster.
See, look how fast we move. We're efficient, hey? So I'm trying to remember how many we did of those.
The first day that we mixed, I wrote in my book that we did the equivalent of 7.5 yards. Yeah. And the guys packed it all on their shoulder in 5-gallon buckets.
Yeah. So, and then we did even more the second time.
Day. We did way more in less time.
I feel comfortable in saying we probably did at least half a cement truck the first day by ourselves, just mixing by hand, and we probably did a full cement truck by ourselves the second day. It was a lot of concrete. And you do it differently, right? So you bring in your sand, and you make kind of a circle,
yeah.
And then you put in your cement mix.
Mix it 2 times.
Yeah, mix the sand and the cement mix. You mix that first. Then again, you make it in a circle. You pour some water in there. You put your gravel on top of it, mix it again. 2 times. Put some more water on it, mix it again. You can kind of see here. Because they want it all mixed in really good. So we haven't even poured water yet. So there's your aggregate, your rock. Then we start throwing water on it. You start mixing it again, slowly, because it's heavy already by this point. And you just keep adding water and turning it over and over and over again. So even though this looks like this is happening really fast, this is
probably an hour and a half of work, I think.
It's a lot of work. And you are tired. It's very back-breaking work.
You notice all those juice jugs on the side there?
So yeah, just to give you a hint. So all the Coke bottles, the juice bottles, we almost after every mix you needed to have almost like a whole bottle. Because guess what? Even though you drank all that liquid, did you ever have to go to the washroom? No. Because you were sweating all the time. And so yeah, it was just constant go. But you can see actually, I think Anthony's sure you can see how wet it is.
Yeah.
It's just soaked from sweat. It's hard work. So that was the hardest part. San Diego and San Antonio, they were characters. We had a good week with them. We did. San Antonio especially, I think, was sad to see us go.
Yeah. He cried.
Yeah, he was crying when we left. And so we had a good week with them. And so we know a little bit of Spanish, right? So you're trying to communicate with them because they don't know much English either. So I think we did a pretty good job actually communicating with them, even with the language barrier. I think we picked up actually a lot during the week in learning some Spanish. So is that the end of that? Oh, here we go. So this is the inside of their old church.
Yeah.
So this is where they used to meet before they had the new church. This is
Temple.
This is Cito called it the temple, but that's just the English Spanish thing. So
So that's San Francisco's wife there. She's American from Minnesota, Christy.
yeah, right there. Francisco's not in that picture though. No. But we would that's just where we go. We'd have our meals on site. This is where we'd get all our refreshments from, just across the street. So Lucy's, I should be pointing there because
Okay.
that's where that was.
There was one thing you failed to mention, Reverend.
What's that?
The rooster.
The rooster. Gary and his rooster.
There was a rooster, or roosters. They would crow all day long and nonstop. Like I wondered if they were automatic. A mechanical rooster. They would stop sometimes for coffee break, but they just crowed and crowed and crowed all day long. I have never seen the likes.
Yeah. And I forget when we realized that, but all of a sudden it was like, why is that rooster still crowing? But anyways, so this was one of the places we stayed went for supper. They're actually with Wycliffe. I'm trying to remember their names though. They're missionaries in Oaxaca. They attend the church, but they're with Wycliffe. They do some translation, I believe, is what that was. One of the families that brought us supper the one day, or lunch, I guess, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So she's actually not that short. He's just that tall. He's actually a police officer. He was like 6'5", so he's pretty tall. But yeah, he's a police officer. And that's his wife. Yeah.
Yeah. And they drove a Volkswagen, a Beetle.
Yeah. Oh, it was something to see him get out of that little car. It was, yeah.
And the police there, they rode motorcycles a lot. So imagine he would be on a motorcycle, and there would be two guys on a motorcycle with rifles.
Yeah. Sisters, correct? Or these are sisters, or is this
and daughter?
Mom and daughter.
That was at the assistant pastor's place.
Oh, yeah. Okay. At Francisco's, was this?
No,
this
it
was the other one,
older
right?
man that had the cast on his arm.
Oh, that's right.
Barely in the picture there.
Oh yeah, right there. So the church varies. It's a mix of people who are well off, not like super well off, but they do quite well. And then there's some people who are not as wealthy. Actually, there's quite a few more poor people in the church. But the church is a mixture. And one of the things that really encouraged me was to see how those who had more resources did what they could to help out those who had less. Unfortunately, we weren't there on Sunday morning, just because of the way the flights worked out. Cito actually told me the next time I'll be preaching, so he said I have to stay and preach one Sunday at least. So, but this is a family. The gentleman who's the kind of assistant pastor or elder, I forget what his official title was. This is a very nice house. They do quite well, but they've actually taken in a lady and her children who are coming out of a very rough situation, and that's just one example of how those who are a little bit more well off or have the resources were blessing other people who didn't have those resources, and so it was really cool to see.
If you back up just a second, they said that they almost had somebody every night for supper.
Yeah.
And and they cooked a very nice meal. Like, this wasn't even their family. These were just people that he was he IT or into IT or electronics?
He was, it's computers, I want to say.
And really a nice family. And they were there too. And then that other lady and her daughter, they'd lived there, I don't know how long, maybe a year. So I'm amazed.
There were like 15 or 20 of us in their house that night for supper.
Big meal.
and that's just what they do. Because they can, they have people over all the time for meals. It's not only for fellowship, but also supporting those in their church who maybe can't afford that all the time. And so just so good to see that taking place, and so friendly. Just great people. The next slide. This family took us out actually for supper. That was was that the last night we were in Oaxaca?
Yep. We were downtown.
Yeah. And we might have some, I don't know if there's some pictures of when we were
I think
downtown.
that picture of Dave and Terry was with that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If you want to go back to that last slide. So yeah, they took us out to this authentic Mexican restaurant, and really good, very unique. That was a lot of fun with them and their boys.
So this was the home that before, that one we were talking about?
Yeah.
People
He,
every night.
he's the elder / associate kind of pastor.
The daughter on the left is Cito's assistant in the dental office.
Yeah. So she helps him out. Next one. Okay, we went here for lunch though.
Yeah.
They lived about, I don't know, 4 or 5 blocks away from the church. And so we went to their place for lunch. Oh, I think that meal was my favorite.
What did you have?
I would say exclusively we had like authentic Mexican food. So it varied. So tamales, tacos. I think this one was the hard shell, right? With the
good.
beans and the sour, yeah, like just oh.
They had a couple. They had a couple big turkeys in their backyard. Yeah. We went and we filmed those things, and yeah, really neat.
Just the food, at least I'll speak for myself. The food was amazing. Sorry,
Oh,
the
always.
food. It's not like the food or the just the heat. Oh, they would usually allow you to put hot sauce on yourself. And so some of us like that, some of us don't, which was why it was nice to have the option. I'll speak for myself. I know too, Anthony. Anthony loves spice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so me and Anthony, I wouldn't even put on as much as he would, but me and him would usually experiment a little bit more on the spicy side. But Anthony, basically, the first question out of his mouth when they asked if there's any, what they would like for condiments, he'd be like, "What's the spiciest stuff you got?" And he was sweating a few times, so it was good. Oh, this is a shoemaker.
Shoemakers. This is my favorite spot.
Yeah. So him and his wife, he repairs shoes. And so when you drive down the road where their house is on, there's literally it's fence, but then there's just this little booth, and people bring their shoes and he repairs them. That's what he does for a living. They would, they're poor.
Yeah.
They just had saved up enough to do a little addition onto their house. But if you take away that little addition that they had just spent basically their whole lives saving for, they literally lived in a shack up until that point.
Just a little bit of tin and some 2x4s.
That was literally what they lived in before. And so actually, Cito and Juanita have already talked to me about a project that they would like us to do for that family, because that family serves mightily in the church. And so Cito and Juanita had just asked if there was a few. While I was there, I was supposed to look around to see whether we could do the projects for them, whether we figured it was physically possible, and I think it is. And so again, we have some more projects that we want to do in that regard, but super nice family, just wonderful people. These are a couple. Is this the sisters?
No.
Gary?
No. No, I don't. We didn't.
I haven't seen them
I've
yet.
got a picture of them, but these aren't the sisters.
Okay. Just a couple of the ladies who would come and make lunch for us during the week. This is what they were using as a makeshift kitchen at the church. Literally about, I don't know, 8, 10 feet wide by about 10 feet. Wasn't a lot of space. But that's where they were doing all their cooking now and hosting meals. So very small space.
But extremely clean.
Oh yeah,
Everything was clean.
always clean. Actually, and Mike, one of the side projects that Mike did was he installed some more lights in their church, put in some new outlets, and fixed.
We did some fixing.
Did some fixing. Yeah, their electrical was not what we would call up to code. So Mike did some stuff for them to try and help them out in that regard as well, which was good. I think they would probably have enough work for you for a few weeks.
Yeah, I think I could be there maybe all winter or something.
All winter, yeah. Maybe you'll just have to, hey? I'm sure that wouldn't be too hard of a sell. The one night we went, our last night, we went downtown Oaxaca. And this was just, this is, I guess it would be like a first responder almost, right? Like someone who was there for medical if anyone needed it. But downtown Oaxaca is beautiful. Like, go ahead if you have something to say, Mike.
Yeah, just extremely old and just authentic Mexico.
It's a lot of the buildings are like 300, 400 years old in downtown Oaxaca. So we went into a cathedral that I think was like 500 or 600 years old. Just amazing, beautiful. At the one outside restaurant, like you got to remember, it's like a big courtyard in downtown Oaxaca, and so there's all these restaurants and businesses. And outside of one of the restaurants, like you see in like movies in Mexico, like Mexican movies or whatever, you got that band playing Mexican music outside of the restaurants. It was really cool.
I've even got it on my phone. I could play that music for you if you want.
Flowers.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't see a ton of flowers, but I think this is where Cito goes to get his flowers for Juanita.
No, he goes to the graveyard.
Yeah.
Sure. That's
Okay.
what he said he actually got them from here, but he said he got them from the
That's
graveyard.
what I thought.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. What do you can share about this?
Can anybody guess what that is?
Grasshoppers, yeah.
Yeah, and they really taste good.
They were good.
Nope.
No.
They were different spices, covered in different spices. We all tried them.
Yep.
Yeah. Cito got like a whole bag of them. He says he enjoys them, so they weren't bad. Like you don't even think you're eating grasshopper, but anyways. Oh, here's this cathedral we were in. Yeah, it's like 500-600 years old.
And there's tons of those around there,
Yeah.
every corner.
Lots and lots of cathedrals in downtown Oaxaca. This is the inside of it. And when you think of how old it is just amazing to think, one, how it was originally built and just how it's held up. Obviously, there's been some repairs, but just the fact that it's withstood how many hundreds of years, how many earthquakes, it's actually quite beautiful. So there's more pictures of downtown Oaxaca. You can kind of see how a lot of the buildings are just older style. And so we spent, I don't know, 3 hours, 4 hours downtown that day.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty cool. Just take it all in and kind of see the culture.
But as it got darker, it just got, I mean, there was weddings, and it just became wall-to-wall people like that.
Oh yeah. So part of their wedding celebration is they've got these giant puppets. I don't know what you want to call them, of the bride and the groom, and they're so that everyone can see them coming from like all down the street, right? So you know that there's a wedding party coming, and it's just interesting to see these guys control these huge, I guess, puppets, if you want to call them that, up and down the streets.
There's Dave.
Oh yeah, there's Dave. But again, you can kind of see the building's more of an older style, but just beautiful. Downtown Oaxaca is just beautiful. And if you look at it, like clean, like it's the city itself is for the most part quite clean.
Yep, really.
I've been to other places in Mexico. Oaxaca is in and of itself very different than the rest of Mexico. I don't think I ever felt scared at any point in
No,
Oaxaca.
not there. And we went for that tour around the church.
Yeah.
That one afternoon, and kind of in the poor areas, and it was clean just like this there too. But we felt safe as well there.
So you can see those giant puppets again. So you can see them coming along. Oh, it's a whole video here.
Wanda will recognize that thing on my shoulder. Your shawl.
Oh yeah. So yeah, the downtown, like you can see all the people, just totally lining the streets. And so then everyone's just trying to get across streets, walking whenever they have a second.
And every wedding party has their own band, so like, it's
noisy.
noisy.
It's funny, eh? So there's a guy inside the legs, walking around, and I gotta think it takes a lot of strength to keep that thing upright. But anyways.
And this was right when the pandemic was going full bore in America already.
Yeah.
And there's nobody had masks on here.
No. Because this is the night before we came home when we kind of had already started hearing that they were going to be shutting down the borders and stuff like that. And there was no sense of that whatsoever at this point in Mexico. It was wall-to-wall people that evening. And they say every weekend's like that. It's family day. Like this is, there's obviously some tourists, but you can see lots of kids. Families come together and just they enjoy spending time together. It was a very cool experience. That's it. Okay. So before we get to the questions, just to kind of finalize the story. So the next morning we flew out, went to Mexico City first, and that flight was pretty normal. Nothing felt out of the ordinary. Even in Mexico City, the airport maybe felt a little different, just because they were talking a little bit now more about COVID and everything else. But most people didn't have masks. The airport was still quite busy. We flew out from there to Minneapolis. And when we flew into Minneapolis, that's kind of where you started to feel like things were a little different. The airport definitely didn't seem as busy, and I've been in through Minneapolis lots. But we stayed the night in Minneapolis, so we went to the hotel. Again, still felt decently normal. Stayed the night. Some of the guys went to the Mall of America the next morning, just because we had some time to kill before we had to go to the airport. It was dead, right?
Yeah.
That main thoroughfare, that north-south thoroughfare, we walked right across there and you couldn't see a vehicle coming from any direction. It was just dead.
And so
both times, we walked across both times, and I was amazed.
So yeah, the Mall of America, just no one in it, just empty, even though everything was still technically open at that point.
The only people that were going they were going to buy toilet paper. Our taxi driver said.
We were joking when we were staring at we were joking because we had already started hearing some of the reports of toilet paper being in low supplies. Like maybe we should just throw all the toilet paper from the hotel into our suitcases. Take it with us.
Toilet paper in Oaxaca too. Remember? We went to that mall that one night.
Yeah. So then we got to the airport in Minneapolis. Right, we went a couple hours before we were supposed to because it still said our flight was going to be leaving. We were a little concerned about whether it would or not, just because at that point now the Canadian government had shut down the border. at least the land border. So there was no more travel between America and Canada. So we were a little suspicious about what would happen. Got to the airport, there was no one at the airport. And anyone who's been to Minneapolis knows it's a hub city. It's always bustling. There's always people. And this is midday. This is when it should be just packed, and there's no one. We walked up to security and walked right through because there was no lineup at security because there's no one in the airport. Went to our gate. There's like, what, 15, 20 people? Like, there wasn't maybe a few more. And we're thinking, like, are they going to fly with only this many people? A flight that's usually 100 and some people, and there's only, a handful of us. But thankfully, they did board us. We got on the plane, got home. We basically could have each had our own row because there's so few people on the plane. Flew into Saskatoon. There's no other airplanes at the gates. We were the only plane. And I don't know if we ended up being the only flight in that day. There may have been one or two others. But when we got through security, the only other people in the airport were CTV, Global, CBC news reporters wanting to interview about how everything was coming home, our experiences. There was no one else in the airport. It was just empty. We had to read a declaration to the custom agents declaring that we would go into our 14-day quarantine. The guy in front of me, who is an American, when she had asked him to read it, he just obviously just started reading it in his head, and she's like, no, you need to say it out loud to me because it needs to be like a legal declaration here. And she had asked what he was doing, and he said, well, he was coming in to consult for a business in Saskatoon, and they said, well, you're not anymore. They said, you need to call them and tell them that you will be going straight to a hotel that either you or they have to pay for the next 14 days. And he was upset. He's like, can I just stay in the airport and fly out? And they said, nope, you got to stay here for 14 days. And so he was not a very happy camper, we'll say. We knew that we were expecting that coming into Canada. We had already made arrangements. Jody had dropped off the truck and left the key where I knew it was. And so I drove people to their places. And then we went to our separate quarantine areas.
Not for 14 days. There was one more day added to our...
Oh, yeah. It ended up being technically 15 days. And I don't...
We won't mention names.
No.
Yeah. All I know is my sanity was starting to get pushed near the end of that by myself. But you know what? All in all, pretty small price to pay. Okay, so questions. You guys got questions for us?
In that 14-day quarantine, I don't think I ate a single taco or tortilla or anything. I had enough.
You had enough? I enjoyed the food.
It was very good.
I really enjoyed the quarantine because I memorized, and it wasn't a hardship at all. And so I really enjoyed it.
A unique experience. Has anyone else had to do any 14-day quarantine through all of this? No. The first couple days actually were good. I don't want to say awesome, but they were really good in the sense that, I don't know, I was tired, right? We had done some really hard physical labor, and so it was nice to just get some sleep and rest. But then my other week and a bit was nothing but Zoom meetings, and it's a little difficult when you really just have your bed and that's your office for a week and a half, and it's a little it's just weird trying to do Zoom meetings from there, but or figure out how you're going to record your sermon for the Sunday without leaving your room. Oh, my window's open all year. You ask my wife. In the middle of winter, my window's still open.
Did you meet any of the other teams besides Cyril Lee?
No, they were the only two. I'm trying to remember who they were hoping we might have time to see, but never did. Was it David?
The Lopez's, yeah.
Yeah, I think they were hoping to, but we just ended up not having the time. Yeah, between the work days, like we put in long days, and that was part of it. So like we were getting up at what, 7 in the morning? Does that sound right?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, 7, so that we were leaving about 8:30 to be at the church, and then we worked until basically the sun was starting to go down. So just really long days. Um, so by the time we got back to the place, showered, it's dark already. Um, we'd go eat supper at one of the church members' homes, and that just went the whole week. To the point that, our last day, we ended up working even some of the morning, um, which we weren't initially planning on, but we were trying to do some more work on the vehicles and just do a few final things up at the church. So yeah, unfortunately we didn't. Next time.
So for next time, we'd really like to have some more folks join us. And one of the things would like to see us, if we could do, is go up with Juanita up into the mountains where Cito grew up and do ministry out there too. Besides, would be nice to be able to stay a little bit longer and spend a Sunday or 2 Sundays out there. You go all that way. It'd be nice to be able to do that. And but I would really like to get up in the mountains with the people.
Yeah. There's a few things we'd like to do next time. So, other questions?
You go into the mountains, you get different food.
Absolutely.
We had one day there, I think they were pigeons, and then another day they had shot some kind of a creature that looked like a cross between a dog and a monkey. And
Oh, a Cody.
had the ribs, Pastor Ken and Dodie Brown, Ken was with us. They had this roof hanging over a building and our table was set up underneath it. And they had the hide on the roof and the tail hanging down right near Ken. Just somehow didn't need to eat a lot.
That's why you take a couple cases of Cliff Bars with you, just in case.
Yeah. Well, and that, yeah, we've learned that over the last couple of times going, right? The food is, you're not 100% sure, but this last trip, the food was probably the best we've ever had of all our missions trip. We were pretty spoiled, actually, so. But I think the plan is the next time we go, we would still like to go to Oaxaca. There's enough projects that we've talked about and discussed already that we'd like to go back and actually do. So,
in regards to the construction, now that it's 6 months later, have you do you have any idea what has progressed since you were there?
well, COVID obviously threw a bit of a monkey wrench into that, but it is. I don't think it's finished yet, but they were getting awfully close.
I think that first floor, they were gonna go up 1 floor and then pour that floor.
That
And I think
top.
that's poured, isn't it?
I believe so. Yeah.
And then there are plans to go to the 2nd floor yet, but I don't know when that's gonna be done.
Yeah.
It all depends on finances.
So I think the building is basically enclosed. I just don't think they've finished everything inside, and how soon they were planning on doing that 2nd level, I'm not too sure. There were moments.
Well, even in the airports, we never had any trouble with communicating in the airports, both at Oaxaca and at Mexico City. It was just San Diego and San Antonio. I mean, they didn't know hardly a word of English. Oh yeah, San Antonio, he came up with a couple English words. What were they?
Oh man.
Crazy.
I forget now.
They were crazy, but he came up. I don't know where he saw them on TV or something, but he knew that. But I mean, you just had to use sign language with those two, but the rest all knew English.
Or if you caught the odd word, like I know a little bit of Spanish, so and that was part of the problem is they would, when they spoke Spanish, they'd be like going so fast, and I'm like trying to catch something, right? I know more Spanish than I know German, and I can catch some stuff in German. So in Spanish, I can catch some of it as well. But so I could usually kind of get the gist of what they were trying to get at. So I'd be like, okay, I knew that he wanted us to work on this. Then it was a matter of like showing him to make sure that's exactly what he did want us to do. We made, like, to be honest, actually, as much as there was a language barrier, we were able to still get everything done and still work decently efficiently.
Cito would come many times during the day, and he would be our interpreter with those two guys.
Oh man, when they spoke,
Yeah.
just moving.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't catch half of what they were saying when they were going because they were speaking so fast. Quite a few people know English in the church, though. So some of the houses we went to, they knew a little bit of English, especially with the ones who had kind of older children. Because they were learning English in school, and so actually, in some ways, it was like they could practice with us a little bit. So that was good. No. So yeah, the language actually wasn't a big deal. So like, if that's ever been something holding any of you back, where you're like, well, I don't know the language, trust me, you'll do just fine. I don't think so. No. I can speak for myself and say the one day I woke up and I was a little, but not to the point that I couldn't keep going though either, right? So no, I wouldn't say any of us got sick. No, praise the Lord, because to be honest, we pushed ourselves hard.
If we didn't have that shelter mixing concrete, then it might be a little different, but no.
I would say that's the second day, or no, you know what? No, I would say the first day of mixing concrete. Even though we did more concrete the second time, the first go around was almost the hardest.
Yeah.
And that day, and I think that was maybe because we were mixing it late in the day. Maybe that's why, just because it was hotter then. Because the second go around we did earlier in the day, and it wasn't maybe as hot. But at the end of that first day of mixing concrete, no one was throwing up or anything, but you were feeling it at the end of the day. Yeah.
Justin had me worried though. He lost so much weight the first day, and I calculated if he lost that much weight every day, he would be down to just about skin and bones by the time we left.
It's amazing how much weight you can lose if you actually work, I guess, So, no, I actually lost some weight on that trip, there's no doubt. Any other questions? Oh, come on.
So how many of you would like to go on a mission trip? See some hands.
So who were those hands? Write them down.
I saw one back there. I saw another hand there. I saw a hand over there. A couple hands.
I would like to see us go with a larger group next time. The four of us, I think it was a great experience for the four of us.
Well, we actually had 6 with Dave and Terry.
Well, with Dave and Terry, yeah. And I know that they can accommodate up to 8 in Oaxaca, and I'd like to take a full group next time. And there's definitely some specific talents, if we can incorporate it into the group, would be very beneficial. But at the same time, I think it would be a great experience for anyone to come along. And you may not necessarily feel like you can do the physical labor, that's fine. There's other ministry opportunities outside of physical labor that other people can be doing. For those of us who might be doing the physical labor, Juanita is definitely got tons of ministry opportunities for other people and would chauffeur them to those opportunities too. And so, yeah, I want to encourage people to get involved again. Obviously, I know Gary wants to go this year already, but obviously with everything the way it is, that's not going to happen. But hopefully the year after we can go again. So. No other questions? Last chance. Did you guys have a good time?
Yes, very good. Mission trips are always, they're, it's so much different when you go on a mission trip. I mean, yeah, it's hard work. Maybe the foods are a little bit different, but it's always a blessing when you can go and serve the Lord and serve others, and it just lifts up your spirit, and yeah, it gets your eyes off the world. You're just out there serving the Lord. And the armed forces have a slogan: "There's no life like the armed forces." It's totally untrue. There's no life like serving the Lord, and that's the bottom line. And yeah, we didn't have an opportunity really to share a lot, but we had opportunity to help, and even that was just great.
Yeah. Well, and I know Cito said that a few times. He at least he mentioned it to me. He just said, I don't know how we would have gotten this much done without you guys. And that's a huge blessing for them, and glad that we could do that for them. I thoroughly enjoyed working with you guys. I had a great week. As much as coming home and to the whole COVID thing was a bit of a whatever, I thoroughly enjoyed the week with you guys. Man, I had a blast. I definitely am hoping and looking forward to doing that again if possible. So, well, if there's no more questions, then we will close in prayer. But feel free to talk to us, especially if you guys are thinking that maybe the next time in going, and you have some questions about what that looks like and what it would be involved, talk to us. I think any of us would be more than willing to share about our experiences. Yeah.
And as far as fundraising, like I'm okay because I'm a contractor, so money isn't an issue for us. But if we have those that can't, it's a struggle for them to raise money. I would say if you have a roof that needs to be shingled, you have a house that needs to be sided, let the church know, and we can come in and we can do that for you, and we can do a professional job, because that's what we do, that's our trades, and we could set that money aside for people that want to go on a mission project.
Yeah, we never want money to be the reason someone isn't able to go on a mission trip, especially if the Lord is calling you. I really do think it was a great experience for us. I think it was a great blessing to the church there, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the next time. So.
I have one question. You did decide you had to have a passport.
Yeah.
Do you need to get any shots from the people in town?
No. Well, your shots need to be up to date, so your tetanus and stuff like that. But outside of that, no. Mexico is, that's not an issue with Mexico. Haiti, there's a few things you got to get, but not with Mexico, which was obviously nice. But yeah, if your shots are up to date, like tetanus and such, not an issue. And a passport's easy. If you don't have a passport, I can help you do the paperwork. It's not too bad. Okay, well, why don't I close in prayer, and then you're free to socialize, I guess, a little bit. Dear Lord, thank you for this evening. Thank you that we could share about what we were able to accomplish in ministering to a church around the world. And Lord, thank you for the opportunity that we could do that, build into the lives of brothers and sisters in Christ in another country, and pour into them, Lord, and encourage them. I know that was the one thing Cito and Juanita said when we left. They just felt like they were so encouraged that week. And that was our goal. That was our desire, was to encourage them. And so, Lord, I just pray that as a church we would continue to not only do what we can to support missions around the world, but to be involved in that as well, Lord, in whatever way we can, by connecting with mission organizations and people in other countries that we support, and encourage them face to face. So, Lord, just continue to guide and direct us as a church, and may we honor you in the things that we do and say. We ask these things in your name. Amen. Thanks for coming. I guess I'll say we'll dismiss you from the back to the front as we normally do. But again, if you want to talk to one of us, feel free to do that.